the field. Hollywood!
Let me think about that one.
77 yards. Whoa! Who is this kid?
Lester.
All right, we are recording. We're back with another episode of the Steve Weatherford Show, and I'm joined by my amazing spiritual son, Piercy Big Show. And we're also interviewing one of my good friends. His name is Travis Ayla. And I'm excited to get into this episode, man, because I would say about Travis, I have the opportunity to work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I've met some incredible humans since I've moved to. I got to get up on my mic a little bit more. Let me sit my phone. I've met some incredible people since I've moved to Texas, but I would say this, Travis. I would say out of all the people that I've met that I didn't know before I got here, I knew Josh Kraft, I knew Garrett, I knew Uncle Bax and stuff like that. I would say out of the people that I didn't know when I moved here, I would say you're my dearest friend out of all of those, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I receive it. It means a lot.
Yeah, man, you're a special guy. And one of the things that has really endeared me to Travis is I don't think I've ever seen anybody transform the way that he is transformed in 6 months. What would you say to that? Because you've been around for all of it.
Yeah, I'd say it's been pretty amazing. Like just seeing the transformation and you go all in. And that's, I'm sure, something we'll talk about through this episode. But yeah, it's been incredible to watch and amazing to just see how much of a giver you are. And how great of a heart that you really do have.
Thanks, man. It's been great.
One of my, and then we're going to give you the mic because I want you to talk a lot on this podcast because Travis is a guy that usually listens really, really well and doesn't speak a ton. But one of the things I wanted to make sure I mentioned on the camera versus off the camera because I was going to tell him beforehand. But before we left my house, we were sitting with my wife and she said, well, who are you going to interview today? I said, I'm going to interview Brian McKittrick. And I'm going to interview Travis. And she said, Travis Ayla? I said, yes, Travis Ayla. And she goes, I love him. I love him so much. And my wife, you know my wife.
She literally said that. Like, I can attest.
I love him.
Yeah.
I love him so much. In my lifetime. This is my lifetime. I have never heard her say that about anybody.
Yeah.
Is that the truth?
Yeah. Since I moved here in March, I've never heard her say anything like that.
She said, I love him. I love him so much. And I go, why? What is it about Travis that, because it's not like you spend a ton of time with her. And I said, what is it about Travis that makes you really love him and want him around and feel good when he's around? And she said, I've met a lot of people in my life and you can kind of tell the people that want to get alongside of you because they want to benefit from who you are or what you can give them or these different things. But Travis is the opposite. Travis is not a guy that's looking for something. He's a guy that's looking to bring value. He's looking to bring love, bring encouragement. And I thought that was like, not just surprising, but profound. And if my wife feels that way about another guy that I also feel that way about, that's confirmation for me that this dude belongs in my life, like for real, for real. So that's what my wife's opinion of you, man.
It means a lot. I love you and your entire family. So I hear that from you, right? But definitely coming from Laura, it means a lot.
Yeah.
So
she's a tough one, bro. She doesn't choose people. She has chosen Travis.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, Travis. Well, one of the things I said is I've never seen somebody transform so much in 6 months. And I feel like we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. But before we go into like your story, what was it that made you go all in 6 months ago and really lay down your burdens and pick up your cross?
Yeah, I found myself really just hitting a wall, right? I've had some good success. I've had a lot of good opportunities given to me that I've seized. I've had the opportunity to see kingdom and the benefits of leading within the kingdom, servant leadership and things of that nature. And I've known that I haven't gone all in on those things.
Yeah.
Right. And I've hesitated in a lot of those areas. But with that, a lot of the blessings I felt were also limited the opposite direction, right? Like I was receiving quite a bit, whether it's success, whether it's relationships, alignments, And I was just coming right to a threshold.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't understand why until I really sat down and started to evaluate my circles and evaluate my lifestyle and everything that I was doing within the kingdom. And that was just a self-reflection opportunity for me to realize all those thresholds were because I was giving myself a threshold.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I wasn't diving all in on things. I was going right up to where it felt comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I've had a pretty rocky road when it comes to a relationship with God, and the people in my life from childhood on. It's been very limiting. Not being all in. Right.
Yeah,
So
if I can jump in on
sure.
you, one of the things that I noticed in Travis was really consistent. You know, Travis would show up at church. Travis would show up at Mighty Men, which is our men's leadership, on Saturday. And, but he always had his hat on. He always had his hat real low to where you couldn't see his eyes. And I don't know what it was, but God kept telling me to like pick on you, not pick on you, like pick
Sure.
on you, but like ask you to share with the group. And it was almost like every time I asked Travis a question, he would talk for about 10 seconds and then he would just get really emotional. And you could tell that there was a lot that was pent up inside of him. And I think it's because you put those different, you called them limits, but you put those lid on yourself. And one of the things that I noticed was, and I later found out it was because you grew up in the Mormon faith. It's, you felt like the mistakes that you made, you had to pay a price for, and that created a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And it really kind of contorted your, not just your relationship with God, but who you thought God was.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was always through the lens of what other people tell me, right? What others identified as their relationship with God or who God was, right? And it was always this ideal that really was what you just represented, very punishing ideal, right? The Mormon religion's really centered around a lot of that stuff. And
like retribution, when he says punishment, I feel like, and I don't want to put words in, I feel like what you mean is like you have to pay your price.
Correct.
Like if you've done something wrong, there's a price that you have to pay in order to get forgiveness or clearance from whatever baggage you brought to the situation.
Yeah. And a real big part of that ceiling I was hitting, the threshold, I really would say it's around imposter syndrome, both not only myself feeling like, okay, I'm at this point where everybody sees who I see myself as, but I have a past, everybody does. And at what point does that get turned on me of it's, you're now time to pay that price, right? You're not worthy, the guilt, the shame and everything that comes with that. And on the other side of the coin was in my life, I have never known really true servant leadership and followers that lived it 24/7. They were authentic, right?
Integrity, right?
Right. It was more theoretical type of relationship with God. It was when people are around and when you're at the church, it was saying the right things and doing the right things. But as soon as we leave the church, you see who people really are. And honestly, I don't know that I would have broke through that threshold if it wasn't going to elevate. And being surrounded by people that were genuinely on fire for God and having that relationship and seeing that who they are on Sunday is who they are on Monday, and Tuesday, and every day of the week. And, I give a lot of credit to you, and I'll continue to do that for the rest of my life. But you really helped me bust through that wall of that threshold, because you could very easily come off as a very daunting figure, right? That most people hearing you and how you lead as a father, as a business owner, and as a man of faith, like that can be so bold that a lot of people would question it, right? The authenticity of it. So spending time around you and seeing how genuine you were, as well as the people in your circle and different circles throughout the church, that authenticity and genuine feel was exponential. So we connected on a lot of different areas, right? And it just gave me the opportunity to find authority through you that you can have those feelings of shame and have a past and really be on fire for God in a very bold way, and it's okay, right? And that these aren't facades, right? For the largest part of my life, religion was always a facade. It was always the side of what people chose to show you for reasons of gain or reasons of image or just opinions.
Right. Yeah, one thing you said was getting around men that were really on fire for God. And it's really hard to be on fire for God if you're hung up on the guilt and the shame of the mistakes that you've made. Right. And that's one thing that I feel like in the last 6 months, I've seen you not just systematically week over week do, but I feel like there was a moment where you said no more, and it's really hard for you and I to be on fire for someone that we're scared of, right? So when you're stuck in the religion of being reminded of all the mistakes that you've made, all the times that you've missed the mark, all the times that you've sinned, it's really hard to want to bring the great things and the scary things and the mistakes that you've made to God, because you think he's the type of God that's going to punish you when he finds out what you've done, but God knows everything. And so that was, for me, that was the biggest thing is getting out of relationship, or getting out of religion and into relationship. And I've shared this before and I'll share it again. And I'm planning to share this a lot for the rest of my life. But the biggest difference between religion and relationship is my dad bought me a car when I was 16 years old. It was a 1986 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham. And I wrecked that first car. And religion, simply put, is making a mistake, wrecking your car. And as soon as you hear the crunch of the metal, you think, oh man, I got to call my dad. He's going to freaking kill me. He's going to be so mad at me. That's religion, because we're all going to make mistakes. But the way God wants us to have a relationship with him is when we make that same mistake, we think to ourselves, I got to call my dad because he's going to know exactly what to do. When you bring your problems to your father versus trying to hide them from them, I believe it's a completely different dynamic. And I've seen you step into that week over the last 6 months. And it's been so inspiring because you're the example that I tell to other people. Look what Travis has done over these last 6 months. Yeah. Look what he's done. It's possible for you. If God did it for him, he can do it for you. So you've allowed me to use you as an example to so many other people that are kind of at the end of the diving board, wondering like, oh, I know that God is calling me to jump off of this thing, but I just don't know. Yeah. You swan dived off that mother, bro, and I'm so dang proud of you.
No, and I appreciate that. And really what I think you and Pastor Keith and guys like Ryan and other leaders within the church have shown me is I've never had a problem in my past in different careers or whatnot, blazing a trail, putting it all on me and knowing that it's on me to go do and show how it's done instead of trying to conform to the way others are doing it, right? But when it came to the church and religion, I always had a history of feeling like you have to do it in uniformity, right? You have to conform to what everybody else believes a relationship with God is or what religion is. And, whether it's you or Keith or everybody really embraced walking into that church and getting in those circles, really embraced that feeling of, okay, I can have a relationship with God my way.
Yeah.
Right? It's just that it's a relationship between me and God. I don't have to care about the person sitting left or right of me, looking down on me for wearing a hoodie or Jordans or whatever on Sunday at church, right? Because it's about the relationship with God, and it's about where my heart is, and it's about all the things that I never was allowed to think in blazing my own trail with a relationship with God. It was always feeling like I had to tout the line and follow the uniformity, which I've never been good at.
Right.
In anything, to be honest. So
that's why you're successful in business. So one thing I'd like to do, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to ask him to kind of explain, because I know you're a really high performer with, your iCRYO businesses. You've created this management company that's really incredible. But really, I don't think that iCRYO and all of that stuff that you've been doing for a crazy long period of time, right? Was that when you came to Frisco is when you sort of started that journey?
Yeah. So I resigned from being a police officer in 2016.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd love to get into that story of cause you didn't live here. You moved across the country to be a part of what's going on at Elevate Life and be in community. I think after you heard Keith speak maybe.
Yep.
So can you just walk us through what that was like leaving the police force and coming here? Because I think that's also a big thing about him going all in. It's like this guy was willing to just pack his bags and move across the country to be a part of something here.
Every person sitting at this table with a microphone in front of their hand.
I know. Selfishly, I just want to know what his story's like because I know mine.
Sure. Yeah. So I heard Pastor Keith speak at an event in Baltimore. I believe it was 2015. Might have been 2014. I have to double check.
And at the time, were you just police or were you SWAT at the time?
I was SWAT at the time. So I was a detective on an undercover team, also team lead on a SWAT team. And I was playing in network marketing as well, right? So kind of diving into the whole sales realm, which felt natural to me because sales is just a transfer of belief. It's just people skills. And being a detective and narco and things like that, that's all interviews and interrogation is, right? Just being able to talk to people. So heard Keith speak, and he was speaking on Divine Fingerprint. He was speaking more as an entrepreneur and a business coach. And it wasn't until the end that I found out like this guy was a pastor. The whole time leading up to that, I was like, man, this guy's got it dialed in. Like I'm loving everything he's saying. I need this book and I need to find podcasts or coaching or whatever he's got going on. And then I found out he's a pastor and I was like, I could go to that church. Yeah. I don't feel any judgment in his conversation. And he didn't even mention it. Right. So it came in the end through edification through other people. So, started to pursue what does it look like to have more of his content. At the same time, my career as a cop started to take a few hits, with some public backlash on, some events. I was involved in an accident and then I got alleged of assault. And if you remember that time frame, it was right around the Freddie Gray situation around in Baltimore, and just not a good time to be a cop. So definitely dealt with my fair share there.
They had cops that were getting targeted and just shot and killed.
100%. So all that gave me a lot of perspective, while at the same time I was diving more and more into what Keith Craft was all about and everything he's speaking, right? Ultimately got perspective and decided this isn't the legacy I want to leave my daughter. Right. She was getting ready to be born, and I was fortunate enough between the Marine Corps and SWAT and narco and things like that to do what I wanted to do in that career. 5 years of what I was doing is worth 30 easily. And I just decided, if I wanted to be a cop in Texas, I could. I went ahead and resigned and decided, let me just change it up. I feel a massive void. At the time, I was as far from God as possible in a relationship. You might as well call me atheist. But something was missing. I was living life for me, right? Had a lot of accolades and whatnot, but it was about what can I be and, why am I great? So I decided I was going to move back to Texas, where I'm from, Houston primarily, but I didn't want to go back to Houston. So I started looking at Frisco, Texas, because that's where the network marketing company I was part of was from. And it's also where Keith's church was. Came out, visited the church 1 month, ended up going back and just decided, that's where I need to go. I don't know why, but something's telling me prosperity. The next chapter of my life is in Frisco, Texas and surrounding. So cashed out my retirement, resigned, packed everything up, sight unseen, threw everything in a U-Haul, pulled my car behind, and drove from Maryland to Texas with 2 dogs and a snake in the cab, and had no idea where I was going other than Frisco. Wow. And of course, everybody and their mother told me I was an idiot, right? Like, well, where are you going to go? Don't know. What are you going to do? Don't know. You just cashed out your retirement. Yeah. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to put it in the bank and go start a new life kind of thing. Right. Well, if you leave that in your retirement, that's worth $60K at 65. Well, my thought process is if I need that $60K when I turn 65, I did it wrong. Right. So let's just, again, bet on me. I have no problem going all in on myself. So decided to head out that way, rented a house right around Nashville. I was on the road, stopped at a truck stop, rented a house in Prosper off Craigslist. I was like, I hope it's there when I get there. So I had to put money down, all that, right? But the whole all-in concept. And sure enough, showed up. House was nice. It was good. Bought some furniture, started growing roots and diving into what I wanted to do. Played in sales. That took off and did well in sales for a couple of years till I realized I wanted to go all in on myself and start a company. And then that started in 2019. I was doing outside sales prior to that in energy efficiency, selling insulation, radiant barrier, spray foam, things like that. And was making the owners a lot of good money running their company. Decided I could go do this myself. Started that company in 2019, one-man show, did just under $1 million in sales, net about 350. All referral business, not a dime in marketing, just making relationships. And took some of the money from that, invested in the first franchise location in iCRYO. Here we go. So the whole story's been relationships, right? That's what I've banked on my whole life, has been relationships. And it wasn't until 2019 that I had a relationship with God, and that started having its ripple effect throughout as well, right? So I was saved in 2019, was baptized by Josh in 2019, started the first business in 2019. And funny story, throughout 2019, when I was deciding whether or not I was going to invest in iCRYO and open a location, I had about 50K in savings. I would have had to liquidate everything. The worst case scenario, get 105 was the number. Started spending time really looking into the business and praying on it because I didn't want to liquidate everything with a newborn. And over the next couple months, kept putting money aside. Right around September 2019, I had 85 in savings set aside for this. And again, prayed on it right around August on whether I should just liquidate what I needed to take this venture. My passion is health and wellness. You can only walk through so many attics, right? And come September, my phone just started blowing up. Everybody's saying, here's the budget. I don't need anything. I don't need a bid. If you can hit the budget, John said you're the person, right? So all referrals, phone was just blowing up. So remember, I needed 105. I had 85. I prayed throughout it. September just was off the chains. And at the end of the month, I actually net 106 for the month of September. I didn't have to touch the 85 I've been putting aside. Wow. So that was a big drop in the bucket of submission of, okay, this isn't my decision. Yeah. And for the first time ever in my life, I had 6 figures in my bank account and I spent it in 48 hours. Because I knew that if I thought enough on it, I was going to do something else with this money. Right. So, that's real quick recap on.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about your childhood, because I know that you grew up with your grandparents, correct? And they were Mormon. Yeah, and you've had like a very interesting exposure through like chapters of like, what is God like? Sure. You know, as a kid, you probably had an opinion of him, and then, you know, as a teenager, and then through some trauma you had as a police officer and some different things, like that's going to shift your opinion of God as well. So talk to me about that. So my biological father went to jail when I was 2. And ever since then, my mom did her best to raise myself and her daughter with a father figure, which meant several different stepdads. And throughout that time of finding the right husband, my grandparents stepped in, mainly my grandfather stepped in to lead our household through Mormon church. That was a very old school mentality. It was a very punishing religious aspect. Turned me off really quick, turned me off to authority and a lot of things really quick. That culminated with one of the stepfathers I had. My mom got married. He legally adopted me per her request. We got baptized and did the whole ceremony in Utah in the temple out there. And through that process and going to church, it might as well have been military at the time. So you were official Mormon.
Yep, definitely.
Hey, so we did get. I've never converted a Mormon before. I didn't convert you, but sure. I got you off the fence, man.
You can have it. You were definitely the tipping point. That never stuck, right?
That's cool.
Because my experience with the Mormon religion also was a lot more of do as I say, not as I do, and a lot of closet religion kind of stuff. That pushed me far away from my relationship with my grandparents. and the stepfather at the time. And that was a whole rough part of the childhood anyway, right? It wasn't until my mom found the right man, and I was about 15, that he stepped into life after her divorce with Ken at the time.
What was it about that guy that made him like the right man?
So Chuck, he treated me and my sister like his own kids. He treated my mom like I'd always envisioned she should be treated. I grew up watching my mom abused emotionally and physically, and to me, I had to learn what love was through the movies, right? Because it definitely wasn't at home.
And that's also the first place that you and I get our picture of what a relationship with God is. It's a relationship with our dad. And so what I'm hearing you say is, and through my life, I had a lot of different dads, and they gave me a lot of different pictures of what God could be like, and none of them were attractive for me.
Correct. I spent a good portion of my childhood having a bunk bed so that I could sleep on top with a gun hidden in the rafters. And every father figure at the time, we consistently had dinner at the table. We prayed before dinner. Like, religion was in the house,
Right.
but the actions of those father figures at the time were very much not what I would expect.
Religion was in the house, but God wasn't.
Correct, 100%. So Chuck, he never pushed his beliefs. Matter of fact, he even always made it an option that if I ever wanted to see my biological, I had the option. He was a warden, so he had a very good connection throughout the country in prison systems where my dad was in jail my whole life. And routinely throughout the years, he would ask, hey, if you ever want to meet your dad, I'm never going to hold that back from you.
That's cool.
Right. So he's very much led with integrity and morals and things that I'd never been exposed to. Still, because he didn't push religion or anything on me, his beliefs, I didn't necessarily have a relationship with God through that either. And I was pretty far removed, like I said, so I don't think he even wanted to touch that because of how bad it had been for me.
Yeah, how traumatic.
Correct.
It's almost kind of like, man, I'm going to be a safe place for you. I'm going to love you.
Right.
And if you need something like religion or you want to see your dad, I'll bring that to you, but I'm not going to force it on you.
Correct. Yeah.
That's good.
I'm here for the offerings of what you need, but I'm not gonna push your direction. And that continued. My relationships and friendships were not exactly kingdom by any means, and I got very arrogant and very much on my own. I learned that if I wanted things, I had to do it myself. I couldn't rely on anybody because of the father figures that I had, right? And even my marriage, I've been divorced twice. The first marriage, my wife was Jehovah's Witness. And so her whole family is around that.
My boy Travis has been exposed to it all, man. You know what the thing is? I want you to keep telling the story, but the thing is about him is he's been exposed to so many different things. Like, you have the keys now. So when you meet people that are Jehovah's Witness, or you meet people that are Mormon, or you meet people that have made a mistake and been through crazy trauma, you have those keys. You know, just like I was stuck in religion for a really long time, and that's what I make up in my mind, the keys that I had that I let you use to unlock yourself, as I helped you to see the difference between religion and relationship. And then I also helped you to see, and I'm far from perfect, but I allowed you to see not just from outside the curtain, but from behind the curtain. Like, how does a man really live all of the time? Yeah. You know, and I think between getting out of religion, stepping into relationship, and then having somebody that you trust, you love, example to you and encourage you, to me, that was the biggest X factor for me. Like, Keith was that guy that helped me get out of religion and into relationship. And ever since then, I am on fire for God, but I couldn't get on fire for God when I was stuck in all the things that I did wrong and all the things that were different about me, that I hated about myself. God helped me to accept those things that I didn't like about myself, because he created me a certain type of way for a reason. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd always understood relationships. I've been really strong on having relationships in my life and nurturing relationships, but never was able to put relationship and religion together until Keith and until you. So you're hitting the nail on the head there. My second wife was Jewish, right? So definitely made the rounds.
It's the United Nations, man.
Yeah, and then the families obviously surrounding both of them. The environments are what they were, and law enforcement, military. I mean, the divorce rates are through the roof. They're not exactly full of great homes, and fathers are taken away on a regular basis for long periods of time. Right. Even doing SWAT, we're on call on a regular basis. Search shifts can be 12, 15, 18 hours when you're working undercover and on different assignment teams. So those lifestyles didn't enforce anything other than what I'd already known. Right. Mm-hmm. So definitely was just more of the same.
More of what you already know.
Correct.
Pierce?
Yeah. Well, what did it look like when you really got serious about your relationship with God? Like, what was that like? What led you to that? Because I know Pastor Keith had a huge impact on your life, but was that really when you came to God, or what was that like?
And the Uncleback was Scott Uncleback was a big part of your process too, right?
Yep, Scott. I would actually give the onset credit to Scott. So Scott saw something in me through the network marketing company I was doing. He started pulling me aside at different conferences and kind of mentoring me a little bit and talking to me and really pulling the side of me that was just in it for me and focusing on telling me, hey, you've got these leadership traits, so on and so forth. He was the
guy that really saw something special in you that you had confirmed in you by other male leaders in your life. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So he definitely caught my attention there. And that led to Keith, right? And coming to the church, getting plugged into Mighty Men and getting into groups of men.
What is Mighty Men, just for people listening who have no clue what you're saying? So
I would say it's a consistent accountability circle with nothing but leaders and men for the kingdom that are trying to grow the awareness of being able to do so, and even making that okay, right? Because that can be attacked pretty regularly in today's society, right?
And a generic label for Mighty Men would be it's our men's leadership on Saturday mornings from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., right?
Yep. Yeah. Yep, that definitely hits it. So Mighty Men for me was probably the greatest thing overarching this conversation that allowed me to make that relationship and to go all in, and having that consistency of successful men that are unapologetic about their faith. And not only are they there to have a relationship with God, but they're there to give, they're there to honor everybody in that room, right? Whether it was sports, whether it was law enforcement, whether it was military, I've been part of bands of brothers, right? And different men groups that, we'll go to battle together.
From Marines to SWAT to network marketing. Like you're a tribe guy.
Yeah. I've always been tribe because, again, I didn't have anything at home that I really
that's true.
found ownership in. So I always
that was
found
family
myself,
to you.
Correct, in tribe type environments. But every one of those environments were about protection, but they're also about just kind of leading alpha, right? So it's about I'm the best shot, right? Or I'm the best leader. Or I'm
trying
the best
to one up
tactics
each
guy.
other.
Correct. It's a bunch of that.
Competitive nature.
Correct. Very, very competitive. Obviously, we take care of our own, but we also take care of ourselves, and we're always striving to be the best. It's always about who's the best, the 1% kind of thing. And Mighty Men was that, but about who can I help be the best, right? So it was more about elevating the people around you versus getting out front. So is that concept of leadership out front versus out back, right? Leading people from behind on serving them and how can I help, and having a tribe that cares more about the wins of other people than about themselves. I'd never been exposed to anything about that.
Yeah, there's a quote by Vince Lombardi that says, You'll be surprised at what you can accomplish when you have a group of men that don't care who gets the credit.
Right.
And that's what I feel like Mighty Men is. Sure, there's a couple knuckleheads in there, but we got 150 guys that get together every Saturday morning. And I would say out of those 150 guys, there's 120 people that genuinely celebrate the wins of other men as much as they celebrate their own wins. And that's a very unique atmosphere to be in. And that atmosphere doesn't happen without leadership first deciding this is what we value and this is how we're going to roll. AKA, you have a leader that sets the principles, the values and the standards for that group. You know, like Mighty Men on Saturday morning, we don't start at 7:01. We start at 7 a.m. on the dot. And that's not something that you normally see at church. They're just like, oh, just kind of come in when you want. No, man, be here at 7 a.m. Matter of fact, be here early.
Right.
And then to start it off, we're going to do freaking push-ups together at church. That's like the most surprising thing for people when I invite them in for the first time is like by the time we get done doing push-ups and it's like 20 minutes in, they look over, they're like, this is different, man. It usually doesn't even take that long because they walk in and they see a whole big group of men that look like you and I, cut off T-shirts, tattoos, and a whole lot of emotional trauma and baggage that they brought in with them. But that's a place where we can all literally systematically every single week, we can lay our burdens down and pick up our cross again because we're reminded the guy to my left, the guy to my right is doing the same thing.
Yeah. And to call it a church group or Bible study or anything like that is complete disservice because it really is an experience, right? It's iron sharpening iron and everybody trying to be their best for each other. It's really a cool experience.
Isn't that disappointing though, that the church, like the stereotype of the church is weak. The stereotype of the church is hypocrites. The stereotype of the church is, oh, people that go to church need help.
Yeah.
You know, that's the one thing that I really love and I honor about the tribe that we have is they're not men that go to church because they need help. They're men that go to church because they want to help other people. Yeah. And that's a really powerful dynamic shift.
And what was really cool is in my past, I definitely led a life of selfishness. Yeah. And making it about me. Yeah. And it's still that, to be honest. Like Mighty Men and there's different relationships and groups I have, like it's still being selfish in a different way. Like there's nothing more gratifying or make you feel higher on life than helping others when serving others, right? So it's like I'm still technically being selfish because this gratitude that I feel and serving helping others and raising them up above myself,
helping develop others.
Correct. Is an amazing feeling, right? Yeah. Versus doing it all for me.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that because I know that with your iCRYO business, you know, we were at that conference where you spoke, and you were recognized as like one of, if not the best, like franchise owner.
Oh, no, not one of.
The best.
The number one.
Yeah.
Numero uno.
Yeah. And so I know that a lot of that has to do with your ability to help develop people, help develop teams. I mean, you've got a management company that then like contracts out for workers for those locations. Right. What was that process like moving here, but really getting into like starting the iCRYOs and growing up that like business? Because I would imagine, you know, coming from being a cop to opening a franchise, you probably run into a lot of different problems that you're like, how do I solve this? Where do I go here? Yeah. But really taking us through that journey. What did that look like for you?
Sure. So it was exciting because, you know, a franchise model in theory is a business in the box. The model's already proven. You just go apply your sauce to it, right? And the business and my relationship with God almost run parallels in this process because I failed so bad the first year.
I didn't know that. I thought you came in and just crushed the game.
No, not at all. First off, we broke ground on that location 3 days before shutdown.
Hey, would you pause real quick?
Sure.
Remember where you're at, but share with them what iCRYO is because we've mentioned it quite a few times. Yeah. And just so everybody knows, Travis isn't just an iCRYO guy, but that's really where I feel like you cut your entrepreneurial teeth solo. Like you were a network guy, then you got into iCRYO, and then from iCRYO, you really built out a really expansive leadership team. So you don't hire people onto iCRYO. You have a leadership team that actually contracts people to work at these different locations that you have all over the country.
Yeah, it's definitely been an incubator to the management company for sure. Yeah. But iCRYO is just easiest way nowadays to put it is a biohacking center. Right? So using different holistic modalities to allow your body to heal itself versus medications
like
and
cryotherapy, IV therapy, red light therapy, Normatec boots,
compression therapy, IV infusions, body sculpting, all those different things, right? So instead of taking painkillers or ibuprofen all the time. You're hopping in cryo for 3 minutes and reducing the inflammation, resetting the central nervous system, and going back about your day. Right? Finding different ways to hack the body to allow it to do what it's supposed to do in the first place. And that definitely falls right in alignment with core values and passion for me in life. Right. So not only helping people and serving people through different leadership traits and business, but also on a health side, right? So putting health and wealth together is just it's the best combination you could possibly do. So back to the 2020 start, right? I think I struggled that entire year, just like I struggled with my relationship with God that year, because again, I was putting myself first, right? So it was about, how do I be the best franchisee? How do I be the best manager of a location? How do I do these things? And I struggled. I was putting people in my system in that center as bodies, right? I was just hiring people for jobs because I was the one that was going to fix it and figure it out. And I know better than that with the military and with, law enforcement and SWAT and things like that. It's a team. Everybody has a role to play. Some are better than others in different areas, but you identify those things, you put the system together and you allow it to work. Right. So it wasn't until probably the end, I'd say right around November-ish of 2020 that I started to realize, okay, my turnover's through the roof. I'm running the model that I have. Why am I not successful? And then I allowed me to step back, think on it, pray on it, and really evaluate, what have I been successful in life, right? A lot of it's been one-offs where everything was on me. A retail location isn't going to be successful on one person.
Right.
So I had to reevaluate the entire system, the team that it took to do that. And then also, if that location was going to be successful, at the time I was an area developer. So I locked down 17 territories I was going to be responsible for. Well, if I make this all about me and I can make this location great, but then what about the other 16? I can't find 16 more Travises. Right. So it really gave me the opportunity to sit back and realize, okay, just like my faith, I need to stop making this about me, and I need to start making this about serving. So how do I serve the guests the best within my center? How do I serve my team that's serving the guests, right? And just start working that back with a very servant leader mindset, along with the systems and duplication processes I learned in the military, right? And that first year, we did about 350 gross. And obviously we didn't do the full year, but if it would have been a full year, we would have been on pace for less than 600. Right. And that next year, from December on up, we just started hockey stick growth. And I really started implementing a team, hiring somebody to be a manager, hiring different people based off of their leadership ability and their coach ability, and start breaking it down as to what are the roles, what are the people, what do they bring, what are they missing, how does everybody work synergistically together to raise each other, and then where do I fill in the gaps to push them even further? And that required me to become a better leader myself, right? Within the church, within everything that I've been working on. And then fast forward, 2021 is when we broke every record there was to break. The average revenue, the highest record in 6 years with that company at that point was $74K in a month. And we became the first location to ever hit $100K. And we did it multiple times. Then we became the first location in 21. We did 1.2 in annual sales. And then this year we're on pace for 1.5. We're the only company to do back-to-back $1 million years. The list goes on. And honestly, it only goes on because it's been all team driven. Yeah. Even like the conference that y'all talked about, that y'all went to, all franchisees went to that. I took 10 people off my team to go to that, and I wanted them on stage. And everything that you'll hear me say at that conference is about team. I help develop it, right? But if I don't have coachable team members with buy-in, and I don't hire off of core values, and I don't lead the right way, I don't get the right people. If I don't empower them, they don't grow, right? So making it that shift from me as a franchisee to working on a team and focusing it on their ability to accomplish and grow and develop is really what took the business off.
Yeah.
So when let me ask this real quick, Piercy.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing you say is in 2020, the year that you struggled, that was the year that you were a mercenary, right? Like, it's all on me. I got to be the best leader. I got to be the best franchisee. And then when you shifted things, you went from being a transactional leader to a transformational leader. A transactional leader will, I'll do for you if you do for me.
Right.
A transformational leader is a servant leader. And one other thing that I thought of as you were speaking is you went from a mercenary to a maestro. Like, a maestro is the guy that stands before the band, and you've got your the woodwinds over here, everybody's got their horns, and then you've got the violins, and then you've got the bass over here. And what I'm hearing you say is, I was the best instrument player out of everybody, but I wasn't leading people in 2020. So I put my instrument down in 2021. And I got the stick in my hand, and I began to direct traffic and be able to put people where they were best suited for the gifts and the instrument that God had placed in their hand. And it reminds me of, like, kind of feel like my story. My whole life, I felt like I was a Ronin. And for people listening to this, if you don't know what a Ronin is a samurai with no master. And so, much like Travis, I was very competitive. I mean, I'm an athlete, so everything that I would do, it wasn't good unless I could compare it to somebody else. And if it was better than them, then I could say it was at least good. And there would be times where I would, in my opinion, do really good. But then when I would look at what the comparison to other people were and it didn't fare well, then I would have a poor opinion of myself. And it wasn't until Keith came into my life. So I got saved. For those of you guys listening. Keith Craft is our pastor. So we said his name quite a bit. But when I went from being a Ronin, a masterless samurai, to where I am right now, it's when I found a man that was worthy for me to submit to. Because I knew that he was submitted to God. So if I submitted to him, then I knew that he would pull me closer into a relationship with God, not just closer into a relationship with him because I would submit it to another man. But when a master samurai finds a sensei, he can get off of mission and he can get on to purpose. And that's what I'm hearing you say is from 2020 to 2021, I got off the mission of being a great franchisee owner or a great business guy. And I allowed myself to be transformed into being a leader of men, a leader of the business, and not just men, but women as well. Am I hearing that clear?
100%. And like you used the music analogy, right? I could be the best trombone player out there, but
trombone's your thing, huh?
No, I just went to that.
I just figured you'd be like a violin.
I was going to
guy.
say percussionist or whatever, right? But
he said trombone.
That being said, an orchestra is going to reach more people, right?
Yeah.
That's going to draw more people.
Shoot, yeah.
Right. So, and they could all be 7s at their instruments. I could be a 10 at mine, but that collaboration is what's going to draw more, right? And that diversification and what have you. So the same with the business. And I had to really take a back seat and realize if this is going to go anywhere, it's going to be by the ability of the team, right? So maybe I could hop in here and run a location in 30 days to get to 100K right out of the gate. Maybe it would take the team 6 months to get there, right? But would I rather slave away to get there in 30 days and lock myself into a job? Or would I rather develop the team and take the time and the patience to refine those processes, those systems, and improve the leadership of the team for it to get there in 6 months and stay there without me? And that's been honestly the most rewarding part of this. I mean, I've got team members that have been with me for a year plus that don't even recognize their life, right? I've got a center manager that's in her early 20s that came on my team very quiet, very reserved, wouldn't really want to talk to anybody, has never had a managing position in her life, and now is running a center of 10 to 12 people.
That's because you Scott Uncle backed her.
Right.
You saw something special in her the same way Scott saw something special in you because he had an eye for it, just like you have an eye for it. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yep. Just finding ways to feed them. Right.
You're uncle backing people, bro.
I'll take it.
He's a verb now.
That's good.
I'll take it.
That's amazing. One thing I wanted to ask you, I mean, this is probably this itself, right? Because I know that you go into different companies, like we were just talking about someone we know before, that you're going to help audit their systems and their processes with
The
there.
Smoothie King owner has multiple locations.
Yeah. So I was just going to ask, like, what is some things that you see in different franchise owners and the way they run their business that like is troublesome or problemsome that you could easily like shift or advice you'd give to them?
Yeah. So I work with multiple small businesses, right? But franchise business owners become a niche and a specialty just because obviously there's a lot of franchises out there and they're growing regularly. But I find with a lot of franchise owners, they're the easiest to improve because they're usually the one in the way. And they don't say that out of arrogance or to put them down. They buy this business in the box and they think that all they got to do is they're going to run it real quick. And then they get in the way of having control, right? They think it's got to look a specific way. A lot of times they'll buy a business in the box and then open the box and try to rebuild it their way. Right. Instead of saying, okay, so this is the system. How do I apply it to my market, to my team? And what's the 20% secret sauce that I need to put to this? They go to reinventing the wheel a lot. And a lot of that comes from entrepreneurs are great because they can blaze a trail. They can problem solve and whatnot. But a lot of times we'll get in our own ways of, I got to do it my way. Right. Or they'll control the cash register because they don't trust their team to be off $50 or what have you. And then they're unconsciously making themselves a slave to the business, being the gatekeeper. A lot of times I'll ask them right out of the gate, when was the last time you took a week off? Oh, I can't take a week off. This place would burn to the ground.
Right.
Okay. When's the last time you took any time off? Oh, I took 2 days at this time. How'd the business do? It did fine. Did okay. Okay. Did it go extreme regress? Did you lose a lot of money? No. Okay. So if you took 3 days instead of 2 days, would the business be okay? Yeah, probably. And sometimes I'll continue that and we'll get to 7, 10, 14 days before their panic zone starts to hit. So then it's a conversation of, okay, so your team is in place and they're able to tread water. So all we got to do is remove you because you're the linchpin here. You made this now a people-dependent business, not a system-dependent business. And we have to move you out so that those 7, 10, or 14 days can then turn into 30 or 60 or 90. So what are the things that you and only you can do with this team? And is that something that only you are able to do because you are controlling it and you're not giving them the opportunity to learn it? And in doing so, creating a ceiling for their growth? Or is it they don't have the capability? And especially in franchising, it's never the capability part because the business in the box is built for a reason. It's just putting people in place and teaching them the model and letting them go. But the average business owner and franchisee looks at it as, well, I'm the only person that can do this.
Right.
Well, this model is put together for you to own the business, not run the business, right? Work on it, not in it. So who on your team, if push came to shove, if I said you have to leave for the next 30 days, who could you give these tasks to? And every time they'll give me names. It may not be the same person for everything, but they have people on their team that they trust to do so. They just haven't been considering it. And then it's putting in the systems and checks and balances to allow them to teach them to grow those people in those areas so they can pull themselves out of the business 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. And then now they have freedom by leveraging themselves to build the team around the need of the business instead of them being the business.
How have mentors allowed you to take, because I feel like you haven't, what I'm hearing you say is I'm not hearing you say like I've learned a ton in the last 3 years, but what I'm hearing you say is I've applied what I've learned earlier in life. And my question is it through mentorship or experience that have allowed you to call upon the leadership quotient that you've built up in the Marines or in SWAT? Which would it be?
A little bit of both, but I'd say the majority of it comes from experience and just thinking back. So like the Marine Corps, everybody's a rifleman before they're anything, right? Just like in my centers, everybody's a recovery specialist before they're a manager. Nobody's above the entry level position. The military is the same way.
Okay.
It's modular. We build upon it, right? Your MOS, your job, if you're an intel specialist, cool. You go through combat training first, and then we send you to intel school. It's never the other way around. So you build everything that way. And the government, law enforcement's very similar, right? So you take a SWAT stack, for example, a SWAT team, and you may have your point and cover. So your point would be your shield guy, and then your cover would be the rifle over top of them. So the shield guy is going to take on any threat, protecting the stack behind them, but the point or the cover is actually going to be the one firing the first shots.
Right.
Well, if something were to happen to the point or the cover, behind you got a less lethal, or you got a hands, you've got everybody, you got a breacher, everybody has their designation. But if somebody were to go down on the stack, the next person up is able to still, like, if you have the hands guy behind the cover and the cover goes down, that hands guy can now become the cover because he knows how to work that weapon.
Because he's been equipped, because
Correct.
you modularly, if that's a word,
Yeah.
you've built them up that way.
Correct. Yeah. So you can't do one without the other, right? We're not going to train somebody for less lethal only. We're not going to train somebody for breaching only. You'll have a specialty in breaching, right? But you're all riflemen first. You're all have these basic skills first. So it's always that next man up mentality because everybody can do the job, and you build your business the same way, right? So if maybe you're a manager, but you know how to do everything in that center where, like, say for example, in the wellness center that iCRYO is in, you have different things like body sculpting, cryo, so on and so forth. You can go to 10 centers, and of those, I'd say 80% of them will say, well, here's our body sculpting specialist. I don't have a body sculpting specialist on my team. I'll never allow somebody to pigeonhole themselves.
Just to
Correct. Because now the whole business is people dependent.
Yeah,
Right?
that
No,
was
I mean-
something you said that I was like, I took note of, is people dependent business versus system dependent.
You'll
good.
always have your leaders, right? You'll always have somebody that's better with body sculpting or better with red light therapy. They just have more passion in that space, and that carries to more education. But you can never let the business like hinge on one person controlling anything, including the owner.
Yeah, that's good.
So as you were explaining kind of the philosophy of leadership that you have, that you've gotten from, that you took directly from leading a SWAT stack, and that's a new word that I heard today, a SWAT stack. So that's just a formation of men, right? Yep. Well, one of my favorite movies, probably my favorite movies, is the movie 300, right, with the Spartans. And the Spartans had a very distinct and a very unique battle formation. And I just looked it up because I couldn't think of the word, but the Spartans' constant military drilling and discipline made them skilled at the ancient Greek style of fighting in a phalanx, Phalanx, phalanx formation. And in the phalanx, the army worked as a unit in a close, deep formation coordinated by mass maneuvers. And so when you see in the movie 300, when you see them fight against like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of Persians, they're able to defeat them because they put themselves in the right spot, but they also formatted themselves to the point where they had the cover guy, and then they had the guys that would come over the top with the spears, and they would be able to move back large groups of armies because of the way that they were led. And if one guy goes down, another guy would fill right in, because that would be the power of that tribe, is how much everybody can cover everybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's the same concept in the military of, like, let's say you have a Jason Bourne kind of character, right? One person that you can set them out, give them a target, they'll take care of it. No questions asked. You know, they're solid. Whether it's recon, SEALs, whatever units you have a team, right? Which one's going to go win a war for you? Right. That one person can only do so much. Span of control is limited. So if you're building a team modular as to the ability to take on 80% of the journey, right? Or the mission, whether it's the job, whether it's in battle, whatever it is, you build to the strengths of everybody to at least get that 80%. And everybody's going to have their own specialty that raises from there. Right. But too often business owners look at it as, they're not as good as me. They can't do what I can do. And that's the problem. They never will be, because otherwise they wouldn't be working for you. Right. So you have to dial down your expectations of, okay, what's the mission? The mission may be, I want to have a $200,000 revenue producing center. Well, that's fine and dandy. And if you run it, you can probably get there. Right. But let's go ahead and manage your expectations to, let's say, 60% of what you're capable of doing. If you can build a team to do 60% of what you're capable of doing, well, now they're doing 120 in that location, but they're doing it without you. And you can go duplicate that. That's duplicatable. You're not duplicatable. Right. So would you rather have one location doing 200K or 5 locations doing 120? Right. And then from that point, you're just refining your processes on leadership and developing leaders further and further, which is going to raise the tide of the entire operation.
And that's why it's really difficult for people that own a Subway or a McDonald's or an iCRYO to have one location and just live off of that one location. So for something like that, what I'm hearing you say is it's about getting the most out of every person that's on your team versus how can I get more out of myself?
Yeah. And then you have to create that and make it duplicatable before you go on to the second. What happens a lot of times is franchisees will be successful because they are a big part of that dependent system, that person dependent system. And then they'll go open their second, third, or fourth. And by the time they get to that third or fourth, they're gassed, they're worn out. They don't have the ability to even live life because they have to bounce around and keep everything afloat because they never actually built the system. They just had success with a team that they were involved in. And they didn't look outside in, realizing that once they moved themselves out of that team, that same business drops 20, 30% because they made so much of it dependent on them. If you can get it to a point where you're not there and it's successful, that's when it's time to move to the next one and then the next one. If you have to step in at any given time consistently, then it's not ready to grow.
How is your relationship with God? So I met you about a year and a half ago when I moved here. How has your relationship with God changed how you lead people? And I want to say that and give you kind of a lead in because how I experienced you when I first got here was a guy that wanted to be better, a guy that was incredibly consistent and devoted, but a guy that was carrying around a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. Was it the guilt and the shame that you were carrying around that allowed you to think you needed to make things more about yourself? And through that transformation, you began to focus outward versus inward?
Yeah. I'll do my best not to get emotional on this one.
You can get emotional on here. You're with me, man. Yeah. I love you, bro.
Love you too, man. So I told you about Chuck, the dad that first person I actually ever called dad. I didn't say that part, but the man that treated my mom how she deserved. Yeah. So when I graduated high school, when I turned 18, I actually went to the courthouse myself and had my name legally changed on my own. Cool. And then I packaged that into a frame and gave it to my dad for Christmas. And I decided at that point in time that this was the man's legacy that I wanted to carry. This was the name that I was going to carry. Prior to that, my last name was Sherman. So that became a huge thing for me. And then I mentioned the accident. I mentioned some other things, and that got me some pretty bad PR and got me in the limelight in the wrong ways. I also had awards that got me in the limelight in good ways, right? But that shame and guilt I took on very heavily because it was attached to the name. And
you're such a man of honor, like honor means so much to you. I think that's one of the reasons that I love you like my wife loves you. Maybe it's not honor the reason that she loves you. Maybe it's your generous heart. But to me, it's honor. You're such a man of honor.
And that's one thing I've definitely held close to my chest and definitely do my best to live off of. That shame and guilt almost got me to a point where I was going to change that name. And I wrestled with it for a couple of years to the point that I would.
Because you felt like you were bringing shame to his name.
Yep. And to the point that I would even put my name on different accounts and whatnot with just my last initial because I didn't want to bring shame to that name that I carried in such high regard. And it wasn't until my relationship with God and really allowing myself to forgive myself and see myself as God sees me that I started to realize that those moments, they don't define me, much less do they define the name, right? I define the name just like he did.
You give meaning to
right?
Meaning.
So if those moments don't define me and I get to see myself as God sees me, then that name means whatever I think it means, right? That name means whatever it means in the kingdom, right?
That's good.
So by seeing it that way, allowed me to fully embody, okay, I'm going to do things for the kingdom, and I'm going to do things to further who I am as a child of God. And everything else is just risen from that. Everything else is a byproduct, right? So then it didn't become about the money and the business or the titles or the accolades. It came about the teams that I was building and how are they furthering the kingdom with, the services that we're giving people and how we're treating people, the culture that's created. I mean, we have most successful locations and we don't even spend money on marketing. Notoriously, I'm always being told how much we don't spend on marketing, but it's because of the way we serve. Yeah. Right. And so having that relationship with God to allow me to lift that meaning and redefine it, really allowed me to start excelling, because now I was back to that moment of feeling like I'm doing my dad, Chuck, I'm doing him a solid with his name that he's bestowed upon me that meant so much to me. I wasn't shaming it. Yeah. Right.
What would you, where are we at?
We're
about an hour in, so we gotta wrap the show up. But one more question that I have for you, Travis, what would you say to somebody who's listening to this podcast that really resonates with your story of entrepreneurship? And they're like, man, this guy's like, I resonate with him. I resonate with his story. But maybe they haven't made that decision. Maybe they've just been kind of like going to church, or maybe they're not going to church at all, but they don't have a deep and meaningful relationship with God to the point where they actually trust that they can give meaning to meaning. What would you say to those people that are stuck in the religion, they're stuck in the guilt, they're stuck in the trauma or the shame?
I mean, entrepreneurship is all about risk, right? So you got nothing to lose. If it's a risk to you to go all in your faith and have that relationship, I mean, that's what you're doing. That's the embodiment of entrepreneurship. And it's a responsibility you have, to be honest. Entrepreneurship is such a thing. You got influencers, everything is created around the hype or experience of being your own boss and having time freedom and being able to give what you want to give to, and spend that time and that money however you deem necessary. That becomes a huge burden and responsibility if you're paying attention, because you're getting blessed with things that you have to be a good servant of and a good steward of, right? And if you don't have a relationship with God, you're not going to, even if you have the best intentions, you're always going to miss the mark, because you don't have the relationship with God to know what you should be doing with that. And I would just challenge anybody that you're always going to have that void. As somebody that's done a lot of great things and was always, the guy in the room, golden boy this, or, accolades that, it was always missing, no matter the career, no matter the opportunity. I mean, top sales, detective of the year, you name it. I've had every accolade in every category I've jumped in. I've always jumped out front. I've always been the competitive person to get out front. And there was always a void at the end. No matter what the victory was, it never was enough until I had that relationship with God. And that filled that void, not only because I have that relationship and knowing who I am and what I'm doing, and I'm on purpose instead of just on mission, like you say, right? But knowing that I'm doing it the right way, for the right reasons, for the right people, for the kingdom, like all those things start coming together and those voids just start getting filled. So I would say to the entrepreneur that's on the fence about that, to take their own advice, because I guarantee you 100% of those people have in some way paraphrased the mantra of just jump, right? Don't sit, don't be worried. There's never the right time. Just do it. However we want to say it, they've all said it. And it's the same with your relationship with God.
Yeah. That reminds me of probably the most exciting and the most depressing night of my life was the night that I won the Super Bowl. Because it was that night that I realized that there was nothing that I could achieve in this earth, because I had won the Super Bowl. I'd had the greatest game of my life and the biggest game of my life. If this didn't do it for me, I knew that nothing would do it for me. And so what I'm hearing you say is, to those entrepreneurs, is if you don't do it, you're going to get more of what you're getting right now. Yeah. So why not jump? And there's also there's a video that I've seen by Steve Harvey that talks about jumping, steadying at the edge of the cliff. And you're never going to know until you jump off of that cliff whether or not your parachute's going to open. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've seen time and time again, and that's why I've just dedicated my life to God the way that I have, is every single person that I've either convinced or I've seen jump, their parachute always freaking opens, man. Always freaking opens. Is there any other questions that you have for Travis before we land the plane?
No, I think he did an incredible job. I was taking notes from him and really enjoyed this conversation, man.
Yeah, man. So, Travis, where can people find more information about you? How can they connect with you? Maybe they want to get coached by you. Where would they find more information?
Sure. Make it really easy. TravisAla.com. So TravisAla.com.
That's it. Pierce, anything else?
No, I think we're good, man.
Last question I would like to ask you, man. What is your and Travis is in our Man Academy, in our small group coaching. What has your experience been like? You don't have to talk for 5 minutes, just in 60 seconds or less. What's your experience been like coming together with 20 entrepreneurs that fly in from all over the country, that have different backgrounds, that have different businesses, that have different traumas, that have different skills, that have different gifts? What has that been like for you, and how has that increased your faith, and how has that grown you personally?
It's been very, I'll say, validating. Not that the validation was needed, but being in a room with successful people that honestly, a year or 2 years ago, I would question whether or not I deserved to be in that room, right? And to see so many people that would assumingly have it figured out, all be on the same page of missing something.
Yeah.
And all of it be centered around not having the right relationship with God, or not having the right relationship with other men, whether it be out of fear, out of imposter syndrome, or just what society tells us men should look like, right? It's refreshing, and it's hopeful, because you see some of these men in apex points of their life, alpha men, right? That so many people look up to, and they have these followings, whether it's just in business, whether it's through social media, whatever it may be. You pull them across from spanning the entire country, put them in a room. We're covering a lot of miles and a lot of different people in a lot of different circles, and to see them all have the same void needing filled, and to see them all being willing to do so, right? Having people come to these tables and lay their shame and their guilt or their challenges at the table amongst several other men, to just be vulnerable and just take on the guidance of the other men at the table that have been through that journey or that are going through that journey, and then going back to their respective areas and hearing the success stories of growth that, honestly, whether it's in business or it's in family, we've heard stories with business or with marriages and relationships that this kind of success should span 2, 5, 6 years, happening in 30, 60, 90 days, because their alignments are right. And they're opening doors that they've kept locked shut out of fear of judgment or shame and guilt. And just seeing all those barriers and weights on apex alpha men that are out there leading across this country, it's refreshing and gives a lot of hope, because it's like, man, if we can do this across the country with just this small microcosm of men, how much can I do just in my backyard?
What's it been like? This is the last question, then we'll
Sure.
pray. What's it been like for you being inside of that room? Because everybody's very open. Nobody's in their dick measuring, but there's guys in there that are making a lot of money. So what's it like to be in that room and to see those guys that are really marketplace killers? What's it like to be in that room knowing that you're really kind of the mascot of our group? When I say the mascot of our group, like, you're the guy that is transformed the fastest, the hardest, the quickest. And to see a lot of those guys that are killers ask you questions like, how did you do it? And how can I do better? Like, what's that like?
Humbling is obviously the quick, easy one. I'm still grasping it, to be honest. Cause
get used to it, bro.
Cause it comes every time we meet. Something as simple as we can be circling around the table. We've got, 24 guys sitting there and somebody's like, hey, is Travis in the room? I saw this post that he posted the other day. It really hit me. And, I took that into my day this way. And I'm like, oh, people are actually reading my post. Yeah. I didn't know that was actually a thing. Right. Yeah. And for men that are in a very good market doing well to say, hey, I want you to coach my wife kind of thing. Right. Like these are just things I wouldn't have ever expected anybody to say. Much less coming from people in that area of life with that much success. And, I've always thought, people are people. I have celebrities and athletes coming to the center regularly and I don't get starstruck, but to see men going out, leading business and leading their families, coming back and you have value to give. Is huge because I feel like that's all any of us really want to do is add value. We want to see that value recognized.
We want to be valuable.
Exactly. And to have it in your peers is one thing, but to have it in a room that you're looking up to people and see them looking back up at you, it's like, man, it really opens the realm of possibilities, where you think you've set the target. It really makes you realize, okay, I set this target too low. Like the rung that I need to grab is much higher. Right. And, it's just, if you're humble with it and, I try to say everything whether it's business and whatnot, it's in my core values in business and personal. Micah 6:8, something I've really locked onto, and my interpretation, that I've heard best about it is just do what's right, love people and work humbly. And it's really embodied in those kind of moments. It's like, wow, I'm surrounded by people that I would pay to coach me and they're asking for that in return. It's really an amazing feeling. And it's even more amazing to feel that without the sense of, okay, how can I gain from this? How do I make this about me? It's to be able to receive that and just praise the Lord and realize this is just glory to God here. And be like, wow, this is the kingdom growing instead of look what Travis Ayla did and what they want. It's doubling and tripling that feeling.
Anything else?
No.
All right, let's pray. Travis, you did a great job, man. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We just thank you for Travis. We thank you for his story. We thank you that he's gotten out of religion and into relationship. And so anybody that's listening to this podcast right now that's on the edge of that, we just pray right now that you just repeat this prayer after us. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you for your son, Jesus Christ, that you sent to this earth to be an example to me, to die on the cross so I can be forgiven of my sins. So right now I ask Jesus to come live in my heart, to be my Savior, to be my one and only, because I want the rest of my life to be the best of my life. So we just thank you for Travis. We thank you for the people that are praying this prayer right now, that as angels are rejoicing as they receive Jesus as their Lord and their Savior. And we ask that this podcast get shared and sent out to as many people as possible, not to glorify Travis or not to grow the Steve Weatherford show, but so people can hear the gospel of Jesus Christ, because there's only one way to permanent change. So we send Travis out and every other person listening to this or watching this on YouTube. We send them out as a prophet. We send them out as a king. We send them out as a warrior, and we send them out as a priest operating in the earth the way that you designed us to work. So we love you. We thank you. We agree with your opinion of us, God, that we are wonderfully and beautifully made. So it's in your name that we pray all these things. Amen.
Amen.
Great job, guys. All right, friends. Well, I'll see you back on the next episode of the Steve Weatherford Show, and you can find more of Travis Ayla at travisayla.com. That's TravisAla.com. I love you, man. You did great.
Appreciate you.